I did want to take just a couple minutes. I'm trying not to squeeze into Vince and Bill's time. But just to pull up a document here real quick and kind of show you. Most KFS documents are laid out in a real consistent fashion. So I'll open one here and we'll take a look at it. They tend to be laid out in tab format. That is, there's these little show and hide buttons that pop up where you can pop something open or shrink it down if you're not using it. And certain documents, when they tend to open, they'll generally show the tabs that are required, that have fields that you're going to have to deal with on that document. Those are the tabs that you'll find that are automatically open when you go to a document. All of our documents have kind of a header up at the top. It gives you a number of things, including sort of a document number that uniquely identifies that particular document. So if I want to go search for this later, if I know that number, I can pull it up. Some other information like the initiator's username. I'm logged in as a user K Huntley here in our test environment. So if I want to go out later and search for documents that I created, I can search for them by initiator. And just a status, which kind of keeps track of where it is in workflow, which you'll get a better taste of when Barb and Nicole do their transaction processing workflow in a little bit, and the date it was created. So just some basic high-level information about the document, scrolled away up there in the corner. All transactions have just this document overview tab, which generally requires a description. Why are you doing this? What are you up to here? And for transaction processing documents, most of those end up in the general ledger, and this transaction gets passed along to the general ledger. So kind of an important field if you want to understand stuff coming out of your ledger. Good information in, good information out. Explanation field's kind of a bigger, chunkier field that won't leave this document, but gives you room to really expand on what's going on here if you need it. An org doc number, which is kind of a user-defined doc number where you can assign any sort of tracking number or something you want to this and then search for the documents by that number later. The meat of the document varies depending on what kind of transaction you're doing. This is a general error correction, which we use kind of to move things from one place to another. So it has an accounting section here with from and to side, which I won't really go into now, but I will cover some of these other sort of standard tabs at the bottom. There's a capital edit tab, which has to do with managing capital assets on your transactional documents. Based on business rules you've set up, if you're using the capital asset management system, it'll tell you, hey, you've modified something that's dealing with an asset. I need more information from you, and it'll sort of take you to that tab and tell you there are fields there to be filled out. There's a general ledger pending entries. David had mentioned, what's a pending entry, and it described, well, a transaction that started but not necessarily fully approved would be considered pending. So once I do a document, you can look here in the pending ledger entries and see the impact that it will eventually have on the general ledger, even if it hasn't necessarily been fully approved and become official yet. There's the ability to add notes and attachments to each document. So there's a notes and attachments tab here where I can put some text in, find a file on my desktop and attach it, maybe as some backup documentation or some additional reference for the future. David mentioned workflow, and Barb and Nicole will take you through some examples of sort of workflow that you can define for particular types of transactions. There's also a tab here called ad hoc recipients, where for just this one document, I can say, boy, I really need to send this to Bob over in accounting because I talked to him about it. He wanted to know when I did this transaction. So I can go in and just add Bob just for this one. So that's really what the ad hoc recipients is all about. If you want to modify the workflow just for a particular document that you're doing, this tab will let you do it. And finally, down here at the bottom, there's a route log, which will show you, once you route a document, this shows where the document's been, who's taken action on it, who has pending actions taken on it. There's also a way where you can kind of project forward into the future and say, I wonder where this document's going to go over its lifetime. Before it's fully approved, who all has to approve it? So you'll find that kind of information down here in the route log. And then there's usually a series of buttons at the bottom of each document that kind of define the actions that you can take on that particular transaction. And these buttons may come or go depending on the type of transaction that you're looking at, why you're looking at it. For instance, you may have different buttons appear on a document you've created versus a document that's routed to you for approval, or a document that you just went out and searched for and pulled up. But basically, these give you the ability to submit a document saying, okay, I'm done with this, go ahead and send it into workflow, let it get the approvals that it needs. I can save it, come back later, maybe I'm not done with it, or I lack critical information that I need to complete it. So I can save it, hold on to it, it'll be there when I come back. There's a blank approve button here where you can authorize certain users to kind of push a document all the way through workflow. So maybe you've got folks in the central office that you want to be able to sort of not necessarily bypass, but kind of push it through the routing, so folks who would normally have to approve it maybe get an FYI or what we call an acknowledgement in workflow, but they don't necessarily have to approve it. So it's handy if you have sort of central administrative functions that are represented by documents, you need to push those through. You can close or cancel a document. Cancel is good if I've started a document and saved it and come back to it later and say, you know, I don't even need to do this. I just want to get rid of it. Let's just toss it in the can. Cancel kind of does that for you. And you can copy documents as well. We have a lot of people who do the same kind of billing every month, or the same sort of document once a month, and the only thing that changes is the dollar amount. Well, it would be nice if I could just pull up last month's document, copy it, change the month, change the dollar amount, and submit that document. So that's really what copying is all about. It lets you find any document in the system and kind of use that as a template for a new document. And there are some other buttons that'll pop up here. There's the ability to kind of error correct, sort of back out a document that got fully approved, and then you decide, oops, that wasn't what I wanted to do. You can kind of back those out, and some other ones. But that gives you kind of a broad 10-minute, 15-minute overview of sort of the portal and documents and some buttons. And I'll be back later to talk to you more about some general ledger